Human Rights Watch says authorities in Somalia have been unlawfully detaining and prosecuting hundreds of boys with alleged ties to the armed group Al-Shabab. The human rights body says the boys are being tried in military courts, but that proceedings don't meet international standards. More than 24 youngsters accused of terror-related offences have been tried in military rather than civilian courts. Military courts give harsher sentences and don't meet basic juvenile justice standards. 11 have been sentenced to death for murder and terrorism-related offences since 2015. All the sentences were later commuted, but the defendants were not allowed to see their relatives and lawyers. Federal and regional authorities have handed over 250 children to UNICEF for rehabilitation after many spent considerable time in detention without trial. Well, for more on this story, Laetitia Bader from Human Rights Watch joins us now from Washington, D.C. Thank you for joining us here on TRT World. So, tell us what's going on now then. Is Somalia continuing to arrest young people, and how many are being held at the moment?
Well, what we're seeing is that boys are doubly victimized. They continue to come under significant pressure, especially in rural parts of Somalia, to join the armed Islamic group Al-Shabab. But at the same time, if they end up in government custody, on accusations of having been a member of Al-Shabab or having fought for Al-Shabab, they're facing a really hard and difficult situation. Now, in terms of the numbers, it's very difficult to say, and this is part of the problem, is that there is no good data collection going on. There's no monitoring of detention facilities, especially intelligence facilities. And what we found speaking to boys is that those being held in the intelligence facilities are really facing the harshest treatment and abuse, completely cut off from their relatives, no access to lawyers, held alongside adults, and often also submitted to very coercive interrogations.
And this contravenes international law, which says that children need to be treated in a special way, don't they, and de-radicalised.
Absolutely, and the Somali government has actually committed to the rehabilitation of children. But what we're seeing is a very inconsistent treatment of boys, especially those that are being picked up in mass security sweeps in the capital, Mogadishu, are receiving a particularly harsh treatment and are not even getting the very basic procedures and protections which children, whatever the crimes they may have committed, are allowed to and should be granted.
I guess the irony is that their treatment by the state can in fact push many of these youngsters then back into the arms of the armed groups. What do you think needs to happen then? What concrete steps need to be taken?
This came up very much in the interviews of the boys, but also their families. Is actually a lot of fear and mistrust in the security forces as a result both of the tensions, but also the military court proceedings. So first of all, the government needs to commit to much more oversight over children who are in government custody. They need to make sure that monitors have access to boys inside government custody, and they need to immediately stop prosecutions of children in military courts. They need to hand over these cases to civilian courts. And in the medium term, they also really need to be thinking about the rehabilitation of boys, whether they have committed serious offences or not. Their future needs to be one in which they can be rehabilitated and reintegrated into society and treated as what they are fundamentally, and that's victims of the ongoing conflict and insecurity.
Laetitia Bader, thank you.